At 3:42 p.m., a Chinese Type-052D turned toward the USS Higgins in the Taiwan Strait straight on, over 25 knots. Radar tracked it all, but the real warning was the silence. Every officer knew this was a test, and one mistake could spark escalation. September 17, 2025, a Chinese Type-052D destroyer made a sharp turn in the Taiwan Strait. It wasn't a parallel drift or a casual maneuver. It was a direct approach toward the USS Higgins, an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer of the U.S. Navy, conducting a lawful freedom of navigation operation just east of the Taiwan median line. The Chinese vessel gave no broadcast or signal of its intent. None was necessary. The situation was already unfolding in full clarity. From the Combat Information Center on board the Higgins, a voice came over the intercom. Contact altering course. CPA under 200 yards. At sea, that is an alarmingly close margin. A mere 200 yards separates two multi-thousand-ton warships, enough to transform a navigational exercise into a potential collision scenario within seconds. The crew immediately attempted bridge-to-bridge communication. English first, then Mandarin, but all in vain. The destroyer continued to close in, bow aimed squarely at the starboard side of the Higgins, closing at more than 25 knots, roughly 29 miles per hour. For a 7,500-ton hull built to engage submarines, defend against incoming missiles, and execute anti-ship combat, this was a deliberate, fast approach. The Higgins SPY-6 radar tracked every detail, heading, speed, and angle of the incoming ship. Yet it wasn't the radar readings that caused concern. It was the silence. There was no radio chatter, visual signals, or even hesitation. This was no accident. China was deliberately testing the proximity limits of U.S. Navy vessels, seeing how far they could push without triggering an incident. The stakes were high. In these waters, there's no such thing as a harmless pass at combat distances. If the Chinese destroyer miscalculated or the Higgins misread the intentions, the consequences could become an international headline. A collision or misstep could escalate tensions instantly. At 3:43 p.m., the radar data confirmed the ship was accelerating. A jump from 21 knots to 25.4 knots in under 30 seconds indicated this was no patrol movement. This was a combat intercept vector. The destroyer wasn't drifting. It was intentionally closing on the Higgins' starboard bow. The crew called out the closest point of approach, CPA 185 yards. 2 minutes remained before collision could occur if neither vessel altered course. CPA, or closest point of approach, is critical in naval operations. A miscalculation at this range leaves no room for error. The bridge attempted communication again, clear, firm, and measured. Unidentified Chinese naval vessel. This is the United States warship conducting lawful transit. Alter course immediately, no response. Attempts were repeated in Mandarin. Still nothing. Inside the Higgins, the atmosphere was calm but charged with tension. Silence in naval operations is not confusion. It is defiance. Command in the CIC tagged the vessel. Type-052D, Luoyang 3, PRC Navy. The Type-052D is a formidable vessel armed with HHQ-9 surface-to-air missiles, a 130mm deck gun, YJ-18 anti-ship missiles, and advanced radar suites. It is capable of challenging U.S. ships in close quarters. But the Higgins did not flinch. Its Mark 45 5-inch gun rotated slightly, a visible gesture, but no ammunition was loaded. The movement alone communicated awareness and readiness without aggression. The crew logged every heading, speed, and maneuver. The Higgins held course, knowing that any evasive action now could cede strategic control and set a precedent the U.S. Navy could not afford. At 3:44 p.m., the scenario escalated procedurally. The Combat Information Center confirmed that the intercept trajectory remained steady, with no deviation or communication from the approaching ship. The crew operated according to established rules of engagement, which are not mere guidelines, but legally enforceable boundaries for the use of force. Step 1 was documentation. The fire control radar captured images of the Type-052D's heading, bearing, and approach every 10 seconds. All voice communications and radar snapshots were time-stamped and saved. Proof is critical for any diplomatic or legal response. Step 2 was posture without provocation. The 5-inch gun on the Higgins continued to rotate deliberately toward the oncoming vessel. This is unmistakable to any observer, but not overtly hostile. Step 3 was electronic awareness. The SLQ-32V7 electronic warfare suite was activated, analyzing radar emissions from the Chinese destroyer. The system confirmed narrowband surface search signals, demonstrating the ship was actively scanning the Higgins, not just passively observing. The watch officer remarked quietly that the Chinese ship was watching them without communicating. A clear, deliberate observation. Inside the CIC, tension was tangible but controlled. Every movement followed protocol. Helm maintained the current heading. Engines held steady speed and fire control monitored angles, ready to respond but restrained to avoid escalation. The message was unmistakable. Any further aggressive movement by the Type-052D would prompt a response. By 3:45 p.m., Higgins added another layer to the standoff. The MH-60R Seahawk helicopter, tail number Romeo 52, powered up on the aft deck. No weapons were loaded, no offensive maneuvers planned, but its presence was strategic. As it climbed to 200 feet, its FLIR pod activated, scanning the Chinese destroyer's upper decks, including the bridge, radar systems, and crew stations. The sensor operator stabilized the imagery, ensuring every movement and console activity on the Chinese ship was recorded in high resolution. 2 crew members were visible near the forward gun mount, standing but not engaging weapons. The Seahawk also captured geotagged, time-stamped images of the destroyer's bridge, providing high-definition evidence in real time. At 3:46 p.m., the Chinese destroyer maintained its approach without deviation. The bridge windows reflected sunlight. No signals or waves indicated communication. The deck crew remained near the main gun, covers off but not manning it. Command aboard the Higgins faced a critical decision: maintain position and shadow the approaching vessel, which is less aggressive but invites continued pressure, or push through on course, signaling strength but increasing risk. The U.S. ship was legally in international waters, 18.4 nautical miles from the nearest claimed baseline, with every move fully justified. The Seahawk continued circling, its infrared sensors capturing subtle crew movements. Engine and deck teams on both vessels braced for possible escalation. The CPA was under 150 yards, with barely a minute before the potential intersection. The Higgins could not retreat without conceding strategic advantage. This was no longer a routine close pass. It had become a tactical engagement at sea, a high-stakes test of restraint and precision. At 3:47 p.m., the Chinese destroyer made a subtle adjustment, less than a 5-degree turn to starboard, enough to avoid direct impact, enough to be registered on radar, signaling calculated avoidance rather than aggression. Its speed dropped from 26 knots to 21 knots, stabilizing thereafter. This maneuver was deliberate, carefully balancing tension and caution. A voice came over the Chinese bridge's speakers, formal, emotionless, instructing the Higgins to alter course immediately. The U.S. ship responded calmly and directly, asserting its legal passage while documenting unsafe maneuvers. The deck crew on the Type-052D moved back from the main gun, one sailor gesturing with open palms, a maritime symbol of disengagement. The standoff de-escalated without retreat, demonstrating a carefully orchestrated display for observers on satellites and global audiences. Both vessels remained on radar, fully armed, maintaining readiness while the immediate danger subsided. What occurred was not surrender, nor a hasty withdrawal, but a calculated maneuver in a series of strategic exercises. This encounter in the Taiwan Strait was part of a broader pattern of naval pressure tactics. In the months leading up to it, China had increasingly tested boundaries, shadowing U.S. Navy vessels, pressuring Japanese destroyers, and forcing Australian aircraft into evasive actions in the disputed waters of the South China Sea and East China Sea. The strategy was consistent: get close, push hard, operate within legal limits, and normalize aggressive behavior to confuse or exhaust Western responses. This tactic is part of a larger doctrine known as gray zone operations. These are military maneuvers, just below the threshold of open conflict, designed to exert control and delay escalation without triggering war. The Chinese Navy leverages proximity, observation, and psychological pressure instead of weapons. They have been getting increasingly bold, as demonstrated in August 2025, when a British destroyer, HMS Richmond, was similarly cut off near the Spratly Islands. Cameras recorded every detail: the turn, the silence, the unyielding approach. In the preceding month, a Japanese P-1 maritime patrol aircraft was forced to divert after a Chinese J-11 fighter conducted a close pass over international airspace. Tokyo protested formally, but Beijing ignored it. The U.S. Navy anticipated these maneuvers. Ships like the Higgins are equipped with surveillance systems, helicopters with 4K cameras, electronic monitoring suites, and legal teams standing by. These tools are not only for defense, they are crucial in documenting adherence to international law. A clear, documented response strengthens the U.S. position diplomatically, countering any claims of provocation while establishing a transparent record of Chinese actions. What happened on September the 17th was not random. It was part of a calculated pressure campaign designed to probe, test, and create ambiguity about the red line in contested waters. By forcing close approaches in legal corridors, China seeks to condition adversaries into routine encounters where aggressive behavior is normalized. For the Higgins, this meant operating with discipline, adherence to protocol, and precise restraint. Every radar ping, helicopter sortie, and documented communication was a layer in the U.S. Navy's measured response. The encounter exemplified a modern naval standoff where strategy, technology, and legal protocol intersect. Steel-on-steel risk existed, but escalation was avoided through discipline and procedure. The U.S. Navy prioritized maintaining the narrative, asserting lawful passage, and documenting every aspect of the Chinese destroyer's behavior. This was a chess game at sea, where human judgment, automated systems, and international law merged to prevent a potentially catastrophic incident. In retrospect, this engagement highlights how contemporary naval operations are as much about psychological positioning and legal leverage as they are about physical firepower. The Type-052D is fully capable of threatening a U.S. destroyer in close quarters. The Higgins approach, Chanta, calm, deliberate, fully documented, demonstrates how measured actions can maintain strategic advantage even under severe pressure. Helicopters overhead, radar snapshots, and real-time logging create a record that not only defends tactical decisions, but also strengthens diplomatic credibility. This Taiwan Strait encounter was just one chapter in an ongoing series of high-stakes interactions in contested maritime zones. Over months and years, the pattern of gray zone tactics has been well established. Shadowing, pressuring, close passes, and minimal communication, all designed to test adversaries' responses without triggering open conflict. For the U.S. Navy, each encounter is not merely a defensive operation, but a carefully managed exercise in documenting compliance with international law, maintaining strategic posture, and asserting presence in contested regions. Ultimately, the September 17th incident demonstrates the evolving nature of naval power projection. Modern warships operate not only with weapons and armor, but with surveillance, communications, and legal frameworks fully integrated into operational planning. Every maneuver and data capture is part of a broader strategy to control perception, manage escalation, and protect strategic interests without engaging in actual combat. Both the Higgins and the Type-052D acted according to their respective doctrines, but it was the Higgins' disciplined restraint and comprehensive documentation that preserved international credibility and avoided escalation. The encounter ended without gunfire, without collision, and without immediate diplomatic crisis. Yet it underscored the latent tension and strategic calculation inherent in these waters. This is the reality of high-stakes naval operations in the 21st century. The combination of advanced technology, legal frameworks, and human judgment ensures that even in situations where miscalculation could be catastrophic, escalation is carefully managed. Encounters like this are a demonstration of strategic discipline, maritime law, and the careful balance of risk in a complex geopolitical environment. Do you want more real naval standoffs and high-stakes encounters? Hit subscribe and stay on deck with every move.